Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this new webinar. We're really excited today to bring another guest, mixer and engineer, producer. Shawn Everett is joining us today to answer all your questions. There's a lot of people already joined this webinar early. See, some of you guys have already put in your questions, and we're here for about an hour together with you guys, I guess, on lockdown, staying at home to answer all your questions. Thanks, Shawn. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing it.
Oh, thank you. Am I audible?
You are. If you want to go ahead, I think there's already a lot of people joining. New questions, people from Canada, from all around the world, actually. So if you want to pick and choose and start seeing what this is all about.
Awesome. Hey, hello everybody. How are you guys doing? Good to see you out there in the world of audio. Let me close this window here. This is insanity. I'm seeing myself drinking coffee about 3 minutes after I drank the coffee. Hold on. Mind-blowingly confusing. How's everybody doing out there? Hope you're enjoying, oh, there we go, whoop. Hope you're enjoying lockdown in whatever shape or form you're existing in. So I'm here today to answer some questions and talk about audio and all the related aspects of that. Thanks for joining. So let's see how do we do here. I guess there's a bunch of people that have asked some questions beforehand. I wonder if I should scroll back a little bit, see if we could go from the beginning. Right now I'm in my studio, and luckily I got locked down in my studio, so I'm actually able to keep working. A real blessing in this crazy time. So here is from, I'm horrible at pronouncing this, and I can't tell if it's an I or an I. Sinai, I think Sinai. Let's see what we got here. Any tips and tricks to record and mix weird, distorted, cool drum sounds? I love how your drums sound like huge hip-hop drums and with 60s vibe at the same time. Thank you. Tips or tricks? I don't know if there's necessarily a trick. I think it's almost just my taste of what I like. I think back when I was a kid, my dad was a drummer, and he would always drum in the living room, and so I grew up with him bashing the drums the whole time, and I just grew up with the drums being really loud because he would be playing along to records in the living room. And so I think my whole life I've just been used to the drums being extremely loud, and so I guess they come off as being distorted because I turn them up too much. So yeah, I mean, when I started working, I mean, I didn't listen to a ton of hip hop growing up, but as I started getting into audio, I started listening to it a lot more. And I was just really compelled by how they were able to get so much low end and punch on the drums in hip hop music. And I liked the way that they'd sampled these old 60s records and stuff like that. And I thought it was really cool. And so I was trying to, merge some of that stylistically with what I was doing with maybe more of the rock music and stuff like that. And yeah, just trying to figure out ways to do that. Let's see here. But, using distortion and compression and all sorts of stuff. Oh my gosh. Hopefully I can be quicker at answering these questions or I'll never get through them. All right. Maybe, let's see here. Alabama Shakes bass sound. Well, a lot of that is the player, Zach. We're talking about the bass sound on the song "Don't Want to Fight." Well, the bass player, that Zach in that band, he's heavily inspired by old Motown sounds and stuff like that, and they had a real punchy bass sound. It's something like I like I like the percussiveness of drums. I like the percussiveness of bass when I can get it. And he plays with a real pluck, you know. And sometimes, I just experiment with pulling up different frequencies in the bass to see what gives it the most punch. Sometimes if you just like shoot up maybe 400 or, some are 150, somewhere in that between 100 and 400, just keep playing around in that zone. Eventually, sometimes you can find that punch you're looking for. Just keep poking things up to see what all of a sudden makes it pop. Let's see, what else do we got here? Can you talk a bit about the UTA Unfairchild? I heard you ran every element of every song on Casey Musgraves through it. That is true. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I moved here with about $800, and it was not an intelligent move. I was an illegal alien, and I should not have been here. I should have been in Canada where I belong. But I showed up here very determined to make a go for it and try to find my place in this world. And I knew one person. I had met a man named Mark Wilshire in Canada, and he was a composer. No, that is completely wrong. He was not a composer. He worked with composers. He worked on the Lord of the Rings soundtrack, and he knew a man in Los Angeles named Eric Valentine, and he suggested that I meet with Eric Valentine when I come down here because he thought that I would get along with him very well. Turns out I really did love Eric Valentine's work, and I had been listening to the Queens of the Stone Age record that I thought had some of the most compelling drum tones that I'd ever heard on a rock album. And so I came down here a few times before I actually moved down here, and I was very excited because Eric Valentine told me that I might be able to assist for him. And sure enough, when I came down here, his assistant had not left yet, so it meant that I had to I could not work with him. And so in any case, he was so kind and called me back about an hour later after I called him and said, a friend of mine needs an engineer, and it was this man named Tony Berg who basically shepherded me through my my career in Los Angeles. But because of that, I'm so grateful and owe so much to Eric Valentine, who helped me so much at the beginning of my career and basically set off a chain of events that led to everything. And so when I heard that he'd created, I've always loved the Fairchild, and when I'd heard that he'd created a Fairchild, I couldn't wait to get my hands on one, so they lent me one. And right when they lent it to me, I was beginning to mix the Casey Musgraves record, so I tried just running everything through it. I was so excited by it, I just kept running every instrument through it as I was working, and I mixed that album, and I was so excited about it when I was working on it, and then it was just a demo of the Unfairchild, and then I had to give it back. But then at that point, I was so sad that I was going to have to give it back that I realized I don't buy a ton of gear, but I just realized that it had played such a big part in the process of mixing that record that I needed to buy one. And since I'm such a fan of Eric, and I'm so indebted to him, I couldn't wait to have a piece of his gear in the studio. Anyway, long story for one of the questions. Let's see what we got here. Can you tell us about the work on the War on Drugs, especially the effects and the guitars? Well, the War on Drugs records are really fun albums to work on because they take a longer period of time, which is so enjoyable because you can really kind of live in the music more than kind of some of the faster projects you work on. And instead of mixing something in like a short period of time, I feel like I'm kind of always mixing it. So over the course of a year, or sometimes when we've been working on the last one or the current one, we just kind of have a motto. We just run stuff through stuff, and every time we're working, we're there's not an enormous amount of time where we're just tracking. There is, but a lot of time we spend is just kind of gathering together and putting things through things and running stuff into things and putting this through that, and then sometimes we clear the deck and we go back to an old version, and we're like, well, we did like that one time we ran this one thing through this thing, and then Adam takes it, he runs stuff through stuff, and then it comes back here, and then we run stuff through stuff, and then we just kind of like keep turning things off that we ran through, and then turn things on that we ran through, and then it's just like you're making a potion or a soup. You just run stuff through stuff for a year, and then slowly it just like kind of starts like generating some salts and other fine fun ingredients. Let's talk about other stuff here. What do we got here? Let's see what the new questions are. I'll skip back to old questions and new questions, but let's see what the current vibe is. Oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. Don't know where to begin. Let's see what we got here. Thanks for joining me, by the way. It's so nice to talk to everybody. Let's see here. What do we got? How do you manage to keeping perspective when producing, recording, and mixing a record? For example, the new Killer song. Well, it certainly is easier sometimes when you have a song that someone has sent you and you've never heard it before to mix it, I find. Because you pull it up and then you just mix it. And you pull up a guitar and you either like it, so you turn it up, or you don't like it and you turn it down. And, you don't really even know the process of what went into recording that guitar part. And so it's kind of a special moment when you pull something up for the first time and you have no idea, because you're just kind of making decisions based on your own taste and vibe at that moment. And sometimes when you're deep in the record-making process, it becomes very difficult, especially if you're producing, because then you just, it's like a ball of worms. You're just lost in it sometimes, because sometimes you think that you've worked so hard on this one tone or this one part, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And so it's a lot easier to make those decisions when you haven't ever worked on it before. And so, for instance, that Killer song, man, oh man, what a hard song to do. Because, I mean, it's just that we did mix after mix and trying things, and it's just like you in some ways don't know up from down, because you're just trying to you never get to experience that beautiful moment where you've heard it for the first time, and then you can make clean, easy decisions. All right, so what do we got here? What is my signal path between Pro Tools and the analog machines that I use, my 24-track and my cassette decks? Am I syncing with Pro Tools? No. So I'm not syncing. I'm not doing any kind of a SIMPD scenario. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm running it through it live and then playing it off of the repro head, so I can transfer it in real time. So essentially that way I don't have a bunch of time cleanup after the fact. And even when I'm tracking, I'm running stuff off the repro head from the tape machine straight back into Pro Tools. A lot of times when I'm recording, I'll be recording drums, and I'll have a mult, and then that will be running to the tape machine, and the tape machine will be running off the repro head. So I'll be recording the digital version and the analog version at the same time. And that way I can choose after the fact which mics I like from the analog version, which ones I like from the digital version. People are asking me about the vocal reverbs on Stay High. Well, the vocal reverbs on Stay High were, I actually had mixed that record pretty dry, and kind of similar to maybe some of the vocal treatments on some Beck records and stuff like that, maybe a little more dry, that like kind of LA sound. When the production team showed up and to finish off the mixes, they had showed me in the when they printed the demo mixes, that they'd had this amazing reverb on, and I had never thought to hear it like that. And so on the Universal Audio plugin, the Lexicon 480, there's this setting called the Kevin Killen Atmosphere, and it's just a very long reverb, and it just creates almost kind of like this Brian Eno type ambience, just based on the vocal. It's just a really beautiful sound. And as soon as I saw the name Kevin Killen, I was very excited because I love the Peter Gabriel stuff that he did, and U2, and I've been really inspired lately by those old '80s productions and the Daniel Lanois thing. And so I see Kevin Killen, and I go for it. So they told me that they'd had this on there before, and so I tried it, and sure enough, amazing. Also, I'm a big fan of the mixer Tom Elmhurst, and I've seen before that he uses this setting on the H3000 called Canyons, and I've just loved what he does with that, and it's a similar kind of thing, with this long, ethereal, kind of floaty treatment on a vocal or something like that. And I often hear his mixes, and I'm really impressed by it. Maybe like on an Adele thing, it's this long, kind of beautiful pad in the background. It's not exactly a pad, but it's a vocal. Let's see here. Does running all these versions of tracks to your machines leave the sessions wildly huge? Oh, I see. I read that as widely, not wildly. But it made me think of something. It doesn't actually leave them wildly huge, because I actually calms my sessions down. Sometimes I've got sessions, and I've got plugins and buses and auxes and all this craziness going on. And sometimes I don't like looking at that. I can't stand it. Sometimes I just want to see a track, and I have no plugins, and it's a track, and I can just think again. Because sometimes you get so bottled up with the automation and the junk that you can't think anymore. You can't even be creative. So sometimes when I'm lost and I'm deep into a mix and I can't think anymore, and you're at that point when the session's barely moving because you can't keep up with it, I just take the time, and what I do is I turn everything off, and then I run one track at a time through the tape machine, and I print it at the bottom, and then I activate all the stuff with the plugins, and I hide them. So now I just have this beautiful session of just like an analog tape session. So it's much less huge because it's just no plugins, and it's just tracks. But by doing that, I could run everything through 24 tracks, just have it go. But I like to run it through one at a time, just so I can listen to each track in real time, and then I kind of almost, in some ways, rebuild the mix just by the levels as I'm printing each thing, and I can really think about it that way. Because sometimes you don't just listen to one track, and then you turn on the next track, and then you turn on the next track, and you see it evolve before your eyes, and then you're just left with a clean session. And I really love doing that, because sometimes I get like kind of the crucial mix work done during that time, because I'm no longer thinking about all the plugins, and I'm just kind of vibing on just the level of one thing at a time, and it gives this warm analog vibe to each thing. But what I originally thought you said was, does it leave it widely huge? And that actually is true too, because when I'm doing a process like that, I'll run everything, even a guitar that's in the mono, through two channels on the tape machine as like a stereo track. And, those imperfections between each channel, creates a wideness on each track accidentally that you didn't necessarily intend. So just by running each thing in stereo, you create this kind of widening that you didn't really intend, but it creates something kind of beautiful. So I kind of like doing that. And sometimes if that's not working exactly, then I'll delete the right channel and just use the left or something like that. All right. How do you keep drums being so dynamic with such loud overall mix levels? I don't know. I don't know. I think just messing with it. I just keep screwing with it until it feels the way that I want it to feel. There's no exact trick. It's just trying to get it the way that I like it to sound. So I just kind of keep playing with it until hitting that point that I like. I mean, people get mad at me for it because my mixes are loud, but I mean, things are loud and I like them loud. I like it. I mean, it's just fun to try to see if you can. I mean, you listen to a hip hop record and they're loud and the drums are loud. So I mean, it's just like I don't see why rock music can't do the same thing. If you try to just play with it and see what happens. Have any particular films, TV, books, or art that changed the way you think about music? I like that one. Um, I like that one because I think there's so many things that change. I mean, you can read a book in the morning, and then that can influence the way that you mix the song that day. Everything is part of you, and that changes how you think about something. I like to leave the TV on, not necessarily TV, but I love to play movies. I buy movies on Apple TV, and I just have ones that are my favorites that I like the vibe of, and I just play them. And sometimes if I'm trying to reach for a certain aesthetic or vibe on the mix, then I like to have a movie that's playing like that on TV. For me, it's really helpful. And plus, it's lonely mixing, if you're in there too long. And just like a little bit of movement out of the corner of your eye. Some people get really distracted by it, but for me, I don't really get very distracted by it at all. It helps me. It gives me energy, and I can work for longer because I feel like I'm, not necessarily alone. And in these times, we're all alone, so it's a good time to turn on the movies. And if there's any particular films, one that inspired me a lot as far as process was this Lars von Trier film, The Five Obstructions. That one's incredible because I just think that that's a really great film regarding creativity. And sometimes you can get stuck doing one thing over and over and over again. And that movie is just about trying things different ways. And in the case of that movie, making this one filmmaker make the same movie 5 times in ways that made him feel uncomfortable. And I think that sometimes you can approach a mix that way, even where you take one mix, you do it your way. Now do it 5 other times, and you do it ways that make you feel uncomfortable. Mix it through like an old crusty mixer, and don't use your Pro Tools. See what that turns out like. Just try things that you're not into, and then what does that do? What if you mixed it like a dance album you hated? And just what does that sound like if you mix it like a dance album you hate? And then at the end, you have all these mixes, and what happens if the verse from the dance album you hated sounds really cool going into the one that you initially mixed? You don't know until you try it. So that one's fun. Let's see, what's that? What do we got here? Do you run any phase issues running tracks from tape from Pro Tools? I mean, in a drum kit. Not necessarily, because if you were running them to a tape machine and then playing them back into the computer, one track at a time, then you definitely have phase issues on the drums. You'd have more than phase issues. You've had some flam issues. But if you have a tape machine with a repro head, then you don't really have those issues because you're running it back in real time. And so pretty much everything locks back up completely perfectly. If you were running the same microphone through, and then you did that again, then you'd have some weird kind of, maybe not necessarily even phasing, but some kind of cool psychedelic flange vibes going on. But if you have a kick drum mic and a snare drum mic, you won't really have any necessarily any phasing issues greater than what you had when you recorded it. Let's see here. How much of Zach Cockrell are in your bass sound? The bass sounds like an 808 kick. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. Another thing is Brittany Howard loves punch on her bass. And she's also a real genius of sitting there with you and playing with the different frequency ranges. And she just zones in with you and listens and like hears when the punch is really, really great. Also, Blake Mills on that record, who worked on it as well, has a great ear for that. You know, these people have really good ears for that type of thing. And when you're working with a bunch of people that all share a similar taste, it's really fun to work with them and try to get something out of that like that. Let's see what we got here. Do you have Pro Tools mix busing on while tracking? Yes. A lot of times I do. Sometimes I track a record with no mix bus processing on, and sometimes I don't. You know, when I'm just tracking an entire band, I don't generally. Although sometimes I do too, because sometimes when a band is the whole band is in the room. Last year I was working with tracking some War on Drugs stuff, and I was the only one in the control room. And I did have mixed bus processing on because I was trying to, you know, get a vibe going and get like kind of what would sound like a mix, so that when they left the tracking room, when they came in, that you know you can get the energy going if they come in the room and it sounds like an album already, and that's really a fun thing to try to get going. It's kind of like a race against time. So can you get a mix going before they get back in the room? Because then that's you know, it gives you something to do instead of sitting there like a lazy old guy, you know. Can you talk about checking your mixes on other systems? I love your story about the Jetta car. Yeah, the Jetta car is definitely one that changed my game. That Jetta car. I had I can't remember, it was a 2005 or 2006 Jetta, but for whatever reason, that Jetta had a real problem with the bass. And there was just a threshold. And if it went 1 degree past that threshold, that Jetta would explode. And I would listen to these hip hop records in there, and it would just blow my mind. And I would get so frustrated. And then I would go back to the studio obsessed, trying to figure out how to make my Jetta not blow up. And so it became a real obsession, was mixing to the Jetta. And then what happened was I moved to downtown Los Angeles, and I still live. It's much nicer now, but when I first moved here, it was a hellhole, and it was a dangerous area. And one night I came out, and my Jetta was the tires had been removed, and it was just sitting on cinder blocks like a bad '80s movie. So sure enough, I had to get the wheels put back on. And then I was working so much in my studio that was down here that I hadn't really driven the Jetta in a long time. And I parked in the back kind of threatening alley filled with spray paint for about 6 months. And then one morning I came out, and the entire Jetta had been painted completely, head to toe in spray paint, the windows, everything. And it was the same day that my cat ate a Tylenol, and I had to race the cat to the emergency room in the middle of the night. And as I was racing the cat to the emergency room, all the windows had been smashed by the graffiti artist, and there was graffiti all over the windows. And so I was sitting in glass holding this. It wasn't the cat; it was the dog. I was holding the dog and the spray paint, and then it was a real nightmare. And then when I got back, my wife said, "You need to get rid of that car. You can't have this car anymore. It's horrible." And I said, "But it's my whole mix vibe. I need this car." She said, "That's enough of this. You need to get rid of it." So I got rid of the car, and insurance gave me, this is a long story, $5,000, which I thought I'd never get $5,000 for a spray painted car. That's a great deal. And now every day I kick myself that I gave away this car. And now I'm seriously considering buying another 2005, 2006 Jetta, driving it right on into this warehouse, parking it, and running a line from my Pro Tools into that Jetta. And it doesn't go anywhere. It just sits in there, and it's my mix room B. So it's a long story for a Jetta, but I've had a real sadness in my life since that Jetta died, or got murdered. Um, let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Um, how do you get yourself in the zone to work on days when you're really not feeling it? Well, um, that's a good question. I don't have a hard time getting inspired. Um, I feel like sometimes when you're mixing and you're kind of going through an album and you got like one song down and 9 songs to go, you can maybe get a little lethargic by the enormity of it. In that case, I like to, I'll do something like, my classic thing where I'll run something through the tape machine, where I'll just, it's something that's a little mindless, you just run it through, but it gets the juices flowing a little bit, and I don't really have to think as much. And I like to have like an audio book or some kind of like, I like, that masterclass app. Sometimes just talking about some cooking will start getting me excited. And then as something's running through tape, you'll be thinking about something else, and then this will inspire you, and then you'll go, yeah, and then you just start getting in the zone. And then sometimes, if you're in there if you tell yourself you're going to be in the studio for 14 hours, maybe hour 1, 2, 3, 4 are a little lethargic, and you're not really doing something. But if it's 14 hours, I would say by hour 10 or 11, you're going to start feeling excited about something, I think. Could you speak on your balance between creativity before tracking versus after tracking? I just feel like I try to be creative always, tracking, not tracking, anything. I just trying to push my excitement level every day and find something that I don't necessarily know about, or haven't tried before. Every day it's like, oh, what can I do today? What could be a weird thing that I could try? It's just like little things every single day that try to like pique your interest. Some people get excited by putting on a new piece of gear or something like that. That can happen. But I also get excited just by like little things. Finding a new way to run a speaker into the bathroom and a mic in the vent or something like that. That can be exciting too. Just lots of stuff. Let's see here. Do I have latency problems with the Mix Plus plugins? Yes, I do. I have an incredible problem. There are many, 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 many records where my mix bus is so out of control that every single thing that I track has a latency problem. And so I've just developed a dumb technique where I send a click through the headphone into the microphone of the thing I was recording. And then I can constantly be checking just to double check exactly the amount of latency that was happening when the person was monitoring through the horrible mix bus. It's a nightmare. It's a problem that I always get myself into, but I just keep doing it because I'm a sucker. Someone's asking me about the snare sound on Grizzly Bear's Painted Rooms. Well, a lot of that has to do with Chris Bear, the drummer, who is just an incredible drummer, one of the best there is. And he's got a light touch. It's just beautiful. And he plays like a classic jazz drummer. And you listen to like these old Miles Davis records, just beautifully recorded. And a lot of these people are or even like the original kind of rock albums where these drummers came from a jazz background, and they just such a musician's touch on the snare drum, and he's got it, and he's just got a beautiful sound, and Chris Taylor recorded it. He was in the band and also a brilliant producer, and he just has a real musical ear of how to record things, and they recorded up at Allaire Studios, and I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of Allaire Studios, but they recorded it in a big room. And my, oh my, what a big room. And when I was pulling up the tracks for that album, every single track sounded like it had a reverb printed on it. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It was beautiful. So every track had a vibe on it already. I mean, maybe some people would want to get rid of that, but I just thought it sounded so cool. Um, let's see. Um, any advice on moving to LA and building a client list? Well, I mean, for me, it was a real blessing. Moving to LA was the best thing I ever did. And I mean, there's a good reason for it. LA is the home and hub of like, it is a real creative epicenter. And I grew up outside of Calgary, which is an oil epicenter. And I feel like if you want to get into oil, that's a good place to live. And if you want to get into entertainment, this is a good place to live. Not that you can't do it elsewhere, but it sure helps being here. And I don't know if there was a way that I could have been able to work on the things that I've been able to work on unless I was here. And that's not saying that everyone needs to move here, because it's not a scenario where that is feasible for everybody. But and also, I mean, this city gets a bad rep for it being difficult. It is difficult, and I was one of the lucky ones. I was extremely lucky, and I think that it helped that I was so fired up, and I was young, and I had a lot of inspiration, and I was willing to try anything and work with anybody, and be happy and cool in an environment where I could get along with people and have fun and be creative. And I think that if you have that attitude, and you're like a funny person that people like and want to be around and have a good time, and you're not going to make a bad vibe and be bummed out, then I think that the world's your oyster. Because I mean, I think it's all about, you see these like session drummers, or session anybody, like just like these classic people that come in and they're just killing it on their instrument. And not only are they killing it on their instrument, but they're killing it on their vibe. You have like someone like Pino Palladino come play bass, and not only is he killing it on his instrument, he's killing it on his vibe. And he's just an absolutely lovely person, and you want to be around him. And I think that one of the keys for making it is being incredibly creative and pushing the envelope, and being a great hang, because people want to be around people that they can hang with. And if you're fun and not a bummer, then that's really going to help. But there is these horror stories of Los Angeles that people come and it's just bad. So I mean, I'm not saying that it's a perfect version of success, but yeah, who knows? So we got a question from Everett Moron. Perfect name for this. It is very gratifying to see the success you obtained. Oh, thank you. I remember your stellar mix entry in the student competition at AES. Wow, what a memory. In the student competition at AES in 2005, and great things were ahead of you. Well, thank you. That's crazy that you remember that. That was I came down to LA. It might have even been earlier than that, in 2005. I think I might have moved to LA in 2005, but I did enter an AES student competition, and that was an incredible moment in my life, because I was thankfully I was very excited to have won, and Bob Ludwig gave me the award, and it was for a mix I did. And Bob Ludwig was so kind to me and said, I really liked your mix, and here's your award. And then he said to me afterwards, he said, he looked at me in the eye and he said, "I'll be hearing from you later." And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much, Bob Ludwig." And then an incredible thing happened. I ended up mixing the Alabama Shakes record, and when we mixed it after the fact, they said, we got Bob Ludwig to master it and did such an incredible job. And then that album ended up winning the Grammy for Best Engineered Record. And because of that, I won the Grammy, and Bob Ludwig won the Grammy because he was the mastering engineer. And he wasn't able to make it to the Grammy ceremony that year. But after I had gone on stage, I got a phone call from Bob, and I picked up the phone, and he said, "I told you I'd be hearing from me." And it was just one of the, I told you I'd be hearing from you. Sorry, the other way around. But it was just one of those incredible moments in your life where it kind of comes full circle in a way that you would never have guessed, and just a beautiful way that really is one of the great moments for a person. Let's see. Have you ever got any advice from Daniel Lanois? Advice. Well, Daniel Lanois is a really interesting character. I'm obsessed with his work, and I worked with him a couple of times. He came up to Banff when I was up there working, and we recorded some stuff, and he did an interesting thing. He's really into recording everything with SM57s, everything, kick drum, snare drum, overheads, bass, vocals, every single thing. He brought in like a whole cart of SM57s, and I thought, wow, that is cool, going for it. And he's just a real character and a really interesting guy. And he was having a party one night in LA, and we were working on the War on Drugs record. And I got word that he was having this party. And he lives in this almost what I describe as like an old Southern mansion in Los Angeles. And Adam from the War on Drugs is also a big fan of Lanois Productions. So he said, let's go. And so after we finished tracking, we went over there. And man, oh man, I mean, if you've ever seen kind of a movie of a great Hollywood party, this was it. All the characters, just like what looks like Playboy models and like strange long-haired creatures of Hollywood and like bikers and like just the strangest concoction of people. And in the living room of this great mansion was these two enormous speakers, and Lanois had been working on this electronic music, and he was just blasting out of the speakers like full volume, and there was just all these people gathered around in a semicircle, like a real event, just like like you couldn't even, if you'd seen this movie if you'd seen this scene in a movie, you wouldn't even believe it. You would be like, if you were the director, you'd be like, let's tone this down. This isn't real. He saw me because I'd worked with him at Banff, and he walked over to me, and his music was blasting so loud, and he put his arm around me, and he whispered into my ear, and he said, "The circle of fifths." So that was my advice from him. And I mean, to truly get the joke, you'd have to have heard the music, because there wasn't a circle of fifth involved in this craziness. But in any case, that was the advice from Daniel Lanois. Okay, someone's asking me, Casey Musgrave's record, how did you manage having all the air and space and brightness without making it feel harsh or empty? I don't know. Sometimes it's not necessarily a thing. It's like you kind of have a picture in your mind of like a color palette that you're trying to go for, and it's just referencing stuff. In that case, I was trying to make it kind of feel like a kind of classic country record, but I was referencing like Tame Impala. So I just had a Tame Impala record that I was A-Bing it with, and I would listen to like how much like the kick drum was punching or the snare drum or stuff like that. But then But then I would also listen to like a Beck record, one of his more mellow albums, and I love those kind of classic LA records with like the kind of big thick snare drum tone and stuff like that. You know, like Nigel Godrich is really good at that. And putting on these albums and being inspired by them and seeing what people have done in the past, and just clicking back and forth and to what you're doing and seeing what you can glean from that. I mean, I'm not ashamed to steal anything. I mean, a lot of songwriters, just steal chord progressions. So why not steal frequency progressions? And that's essentially, it's just learning from people before you to see what they did. How loud, quiet do you generally mix? Sometimes too loud. Sometimes I try to do it quiet just so I can get like a balance going and stuff like that. Or sometimes I start getting worried about my ears, so I'll turn it down for a while. But sometimes turning it loud, it's just gratifying. And sometimes the real musical moves that I find that I uncover are done loudly. Sometimes you just need to really be in it, and sometimes you need to have like maybe a beer or two at the end of the night, and you just get a little loose, and then you turn it up, and then you start hearing things in a different way, and then you just start uncovering a thing, and you're just like smacking, like you're like, I need a cymbal here, I need drama, I need this, I need that. You just start getting into a crazy mood, and then the crazier you get, the more you start hearing things, and you go like, mute all that right now, and then just blast it right here, and you just get excited. And it's that energy and that excitement that I think really takes it over the top for me. And sometimes if I don't feel that, and I'm really working on a track, and sometimes I'll have a mix going, and theoretically it's good, and someone will be asking me, send the mix, and I'll be like, sorry, it's not done. And I'll be getting in trouble, and I'll be getting in more trouble, and they'll be yelling at me, and then this person will be saying, where's the mix, you son of a gun? You're never getting hired in this town again if you don't send the mix. And then I'm like, but for me, I can't send that mix. I gotta, I know that there's like another level, another stage of inspiration that I can reach. And so for me, I'd rather have sent it when I felt that, as opposed to sending it when I know deep in my heart that it's not there. So sometimes I just keep going and keep going and keep going, and then turning it all off again, and turning it all back on again, and then just going, and then like I need a night with this, where you just like get in the vibe, turn on the movies, turn on the things, have a few beers, and then all of a sudden you crack it, and then you just got it loud, and you're pumping it, and you're just going crazy, and you're bringing things up, and you're saying this vocal needs to be loud here, and then there's a moment when I feel like when I've really cracked it and I feel it emotionally in a different way, and then I say, now I can send the mix. And then people, sometimes they hate it. But in any case, I felt, confident about it when I sent it. But it's hard to send something that I don't, even though it theoretically might be like a good mix in some kind of technical way, but I hadn't felt it yet. So, I'd rather get in trouble than send something that I wasn't emotionally behind. Could you give any advice on the business side? Did anything happen in your career other than kicking? Oh, thank you. That helped you feel like you needed to get to the next level? I'm not good at the business side at all. If I was in charge of the business side, I would be broke and living in the ditch. A lot of people have helped me along the way in the business side, and I've just been lucky to. I feel like, if anything, I'm better at finding people that I trust and am inspired by their business aptitude than I am at doing it myself. I found a woman named Lisi that was working at Julian Casablancas' company, and I was inspired by how good she seemed at organization, and she was intelligent and inspired and was creative, and I put trust and faith in people like that, and she's helped me a lot because I'm a hopeless wreck. I like to find anyone that can help me with that, because it distracts me even when I'm if I have to think about something business related, it just stresses me so much out that I don't even know if I could do a good mix if I'm too stressed out about a business problem. I think that some people are good at some things, and for me, I am not good at those things. So, and I don't think I could go to every business school in the world. Maybe I'd be better at it, but man, oh man, I don't think I'm very good at that. When you are producing or recording a record, how much are you considering a mix or recording? Pretty much, hopefully the whole time. And when I don't, I run into problems. If I'm not considering the mix while I'm recording, which I've done as an experiment, I find that the mix process is a real son of a bitch. Because I think that music is built like a great puzzle. And you have this color, and this intertwines with this, and this adds to this, and this adds to that, and this adds to that. And the problem with not thinking about that in the production process is that you could be building a mess. And you could just be throwing on this thing and throwing on that thing. And here's a cool keyboard tone, let's put that on that, And it's just a nightmare. And if you're really, truly considering how it all interlocks and puts together, it's not only just the mix, it's the arrangement. And things that are arranged well are infinitely easier to mix. And when you're just adding, and when you can't hear the mix properly, you're just adding stuff, and on and on and on. It's just it becomes a real complicated ordeal when you're trying to mix it. So if you could hear it as like a record that's as close to being done as possible, then it is so much easier to mix, because you've built an arrangement that makes sense. Because if you can't hear anything, then you just keep adding things, and then when it comes down to mix, you have too many decisions, and then it becomes decision paralysis, and you are so completely lost in a world of sadness. What are 5 records that you obsess over the sonics of? Let's think about that. There are albums that I listen to as just what I like to listen to. I mean, and then there's records that I obsess over the sonics of, because I think that they sit in a way that is just so brilliant, that I inspire to that. So some of the things that I mention are things that not even things that I necessarily put on around the house, but things that I definitely put on when I'm mixing. Like, let's see here. Well, I'll just list some things. I mean, I love Radiohead, and I think that Nigel Godrich is an incredible mixer. And that album in Rainbows, I mean, I could pull up any track on that and use it as a mix reference all the day long. That is just an incredible album sonically, and I love it. I think Chad Blake's records are incredible, and they sound just unbelievable, and I love them. And I think that the mixing that he did on the Black Keys record Brothers, some of the best mixing I've ever heard. I think Tom Elmhurst's work on Amy Winehouse is one of the most inspiring sonic records I've ever heard. I think Dave Fridman's work with the Flaming Lips. I think the Soft Bulletin maybe changed my life as far as what you could do sonically. I mean, Serban, I think, is completely incredible. I mean, I put on the Christine and the Queens record a lot. I think that has a cool drum punch, really interesting. There's so many albums. I mean, that I just love. I love. I mean, all the Kendrick records. I think sound incredible. Yeah, I mean, these are just some of them. I mean, there's so many albums. Bob Clear Mountain, I think, is just one of the best. I mean, you put on like any like the Bruce Springsteen stuff, and one of my favorite ever is Avalon by Roxy Music. My oh my, that is really inspiring for me. I'm struggling a bit with anxiety and doubting myself in the studio. Any tips for any overcoming any moments of doubt? I would say yes. I mean, back when I was in high school, I had a lot of anxiety, and it's easy to doubt yourself and about anything. I mean, my anxiety was more stemmed from thinking I was dying of a terrible disease, and luckily I figured out ways to overcome that 20 years ago, so that this horrible situation we're currently in isn't leaving me on my back in pure despair. But I would say that for me, overcoming that anxiety was about coming to terms with it and understanding that that was something that I felt it wasn't necessarily real. And so once I realized that it wasn't that I was dying of some horrible disease and that it was just a figment of my imagination, and I came to terms with that, it really helped me overcome that and made me flourish and all the other things. So, I mean, if the best advice I can have is to, for me, it was being true to myself and understanding that that was a problem. And if you realize that that's a problem in yourself, then if you own it and know that that's a thing, and say that it's not actually real, and it's just some fakery of my brain that's just screwing with me, then I feel like you can blast past it and just say, screw that. I can do anything I want. I'm Axel. You know what I mean? With a name like Axel, how can you go wrong? You could be like, motherfucker, I'm Axel. Don't fuck with me. And just get in the studio, have a beer, just turn up that drum, turn down that weird guitar part, blast some delays right there, and away we go. Let's see here. I'm looking at Hosier, Vampire Weekend. Let's see here. What was it like working on Vampire Weekend's record? I mean, I didn't work too much on Vampire Weekend record. I recorded a bass, and I mixed a couple of songs. But I'm great pals with the producer Ariel Rexscheid, and he is a close friend of mine, and I think he's an inspiring producer, and I love his work. There's these modern dudes coming up, and I think that it's if you can befriend some of these people that are doing things that inspire you, and those are great people to surround yourself with, because if they inspire you, then they probably are people of a like mind, and I mean, I had known about him for a few years before I actually started hanging out with him, and I was inspired by his work. And when I met him, he was just as cool as I imagined him to be. And I just love being around people like that, because not only are they great people, but their work inspires you. And it's just if you can find people like that in your life, it raises the bar for you, because I mean, even opening up a session of his, like a Vampire Weekend, you kind of see inside someone's brain a little bit, the way that they think about record making. And boy, oh boy, it's helped me to mix albums, because when I mix a project for a great producer, in comes their session, and then you open it up and you see inside their mind. And next time you're working with a band and you're working on a production, you glean all these things from all these people, and it's like a master class in production by just having access to some of these Pro Tools sessions and the parts, and understanding how it's put together, and also understanding that there's not like some secret plugin or some secret magic that's hiding in these sessions that we don't have access to. It's none of that. It's just the way people think, And so there's a lot of questions in my life about like a setting or things like that, and really I don't think that there's anything in common between a lot of people that are successful. That there's not one answer to anything. It's just it's your mind, and it's like trying to trying to be competitive with yourself and try stuff and just try to make the most interesting sounding thing that you could possibly imagine, and just like be inspired by movies and television and things and soundtracks. Soundtracks are so inspiring, and what excites you, and am I doing that, and just like reaching for something that's magical. And I think that's what a lot of these people have in common. A guy like Ariel or Daniel Lanois or Blake Mills or these people have a magic in them, and the great artists too. They have a magic, and it's sometimes people that like are just the truest versions of themselves. There's no filigree. It's just a person that is like, and they're just giving you everything. Okay, let's see here. My main question right now would be regarding EQ. I see a lot of producers saying they only cut with EQ. Some who prefer to add to using it. I wonder if you have any notes on that. I would say everything that everybody says doesn't really matter. If someone says that you can only cut it, I'd say they're wrong. I mean, there's no, I think that if there is a rule, then break it. There is no rule that says that you should do anything. I would say if it sounds good to you, then do it. If it sounds good adding 20 dB of 100 hertz, then turn that up. I think that anyone who says otherwise is just trying to create guidelines and restraints, and I don't think any of that matters. Do what you like. Do what inspires you, and if it gives you chills when you do it, it gives you goosebumps, then turn it up. I think that anything other than that is wrong. You can't be wrong unless you're putting restraints and restrictions on yourself. You just have to do beautiful stuff and be excited by it. No one knows that you turned up an EQ or if you turned down an EQ. All they know is that if it gives them an emotional feeling when they listen to it. And so all you're trying to do is sometimes, people teach such weird things, don't do this, do this, do this. It doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're painting, You've got a set of paints. You got reds, you got browns, you got greens. It doesn't matter what you do with them. Sometimes you make a mess by you put them all together and it's brown. But you just have to have a vision of the painting that you're trying to make, and away you go. You just start painting, and it doesn't matter what you use, be it the piece of gear that costs $1 or a piece of gear that costs $100,000. Not that we have those, but that's what I would say. What is the weirdest place you put a contact, Mike? I mean, you can put them anywhere. Sometimes if you put them here on your throat, that's not the weirdest place, but it definitely gets a weird sound. You just if you got on Etsy, you can buy contact mics for almost nothing. And if you have enough channels when you're working, just start putting them anywhere. You can put your normal mics up and get a sound that you want. And then if you have 20 contact mics and you have enough inputs, just start sticking them all over the place, because you don't need to use them. But who knows? You might uncover something so cool, and then that breaks it open for you. Really, you could even try to do a mix where you only use the contact mics. What was it like getting the call to do the Killers record? Awesome. I mean, weirdly, I didn't actually get a call to do the Killers record. I got a call from my friend Rado, who is from the band Floxygen, and he's an incredible producer and did this Wise Blood record last year that completely blew my mind, and he's just a great friend and a real genius. Jonathan Rado, one of the best dudes there is. And he was going up to write with the Killers, and I got a call to go write with the Killers, which was very peculiar since I'm not known for writing anything. But that hasn't stopped me before when I get a call to do something that I don't usually do. So I thought, what a fun opportunity. I didn't even really necessarily grow up a songwriter, but you definitely, like, being in the studio, you gather a lot of information about songwriting and the creative process. Everything I feel like is the same as everything. I mean, when you watch these master classes about cooks and filmmakers and what have you, songwriters and composers and architects, people are following a similar process. It's about imagining something that doesn't exist, and then using the tools that you have to kind of create something that you think is beautiful. And I gather that songwriting is similar to that. I know what chords are and melodies are. So when they called me to go do that, I thought, it's chords and melodies. I'll go do that. So we went up there and started writing some stuff, and it went so well, and we had such a fun time. Jonathan Rado and myself and the Killers, and we ended up getting called back to produce things on the record. What a fun and life-changing experience. Desert Island mic recorder effect. I don't really have anything specific that is a mic or a recorder or an effect. I would say more it's just the ability to record is what I would take. It's just I think that as long as you're excited and as long as you're painting, you have the ability to record. You can do something that inspires you. But I would say if there's one plugin in the world that at this point I can't live without, this is going to sound ridiculous because people are maybe going to take it the wrong way, but it's Melodyne. And it's not for tuning vocals. It's for the creativity of Melodyne. That son of a bitch is the best plugin I've ever used in my life. That thing opens up worlds that I didn't even know imaginable. I mean, just deconstructing a Bernard Herrmann score, or like the way that you can play with a melody, or the way that you can design harmonies, and the way that you can create orchestration and just deconstruct anything is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen in my life. And uncovering, I don't have a perfect pitch, so uncovering like weird hidden chord progressions and things. I mean, that thing is just, I could play with Melodyne for the rest of my life, and not even just the tuning aspect of it. Just like I think that it's such a unbelievable creative tool, and it's just a new technology that we didn't have access to even 15 years ago, and then all of a sudden we have this mind-blowing application that is just one of the best things that I've ever seen. Thank you for. I like the house that Jack built, the Jessica Hoop album back in the day. That one I co-produced with my friend Tony Berg and Blake Mills, and we worked with Jessica Hoop, and she's this incredible artist. She currently lives in Manchester, but she lived here back then. Yeah, that was just a period of time where a really beautiful moment where Jessica and Tony Berg and myself and Blake were gathering a lot in Tony's backyard recording, and it was really, I think, a special period of time for maybe all of us, and it really kind of like led to the next chapter of my life. Just learning about record production from those people, and getting inspired by everybody, and so much so that Jessica Hoop on her latest album actually wrote a song about that period of time. I'm blanking on the name of it at the moment, but it's about us being creative in Tony Berg's backyard, and she mentions that I always wore this crazy old hat, and so it was a great time. Parallel compression. Oh, hey. Oh, yeah, no problem at all. Happy to answer. Yeah, no problem. I'll take a couple more questions. Thank you guys for sticking in there with me and listening to me rant and rave this morning. How much does parallel compression play a role? Parallel compression is, I think, something that is incredible. That is basically what I was doing on the Casey Musgraves record with the Unfair Child, where I used I was basically parallel compressing pretty much everything using the Unfair Child. Sometimes I don't use parallel compression at all. That record I did, and then sometimes I weirdly forget about it. Sometimes I'm working and I don't even think to do that. It worked great, and I for whatever reason forget that it's a trick occasionally. It occasionally plays a big role in what I'm doing, and then sometimes plays no role whatsoever. Because it's one of those weird things that I sometimes just blank out, and when I'm working, forget that that's a thing. Can you talk more about melodyning? It's hard to describe my relationship with melodyning. I mean, I kind of mentioned it already, but I mean, if you want to try something, just drag a orchestra or orchestral recording of something into a song and just let it drop wherever. Who cares where it lands? Doesn't matter. And then turn on Melodyne and start moving the notes around bar by bar until it fits your track. And it's a weird kind of technique that sometimes I like to play with, and it takes forever, and it can kind of lead to inspiring results, because sometimes you create dynamic shifts in moments that you never would have thought of, and you can open up whole new worlds, and then you can process that through effects pedals and all sorts of stuff, and it just creates like this kind of a weird, ghostly thing that you never would have done previous, Do I have any advice on hearing compression? Well, a lot of people always tell me that I'll send a mix and they'll be like, it's so compressed. It's not. I don't even really compress things that much. It's loud, but it's not that compressed. A lot of times I sometimes think, like, am I compressing things? And then I look and I'm not compressing anything. I feel like I work a lot more with saturation and limiting than I do with compression. I use a lot of compression a lot of times on vocals, but generally I feel like drums I almost never compress. I don't think I don't think I've put a compressor on a drum in years, unless it's like a specific kit mic and I'm slamming it. But usually I'm distorting it. And I feel like a lot of like kind of the crust of the drum set comes from those weird mics that I'm like blasting with like maybe compression on one mic and some kind of distortion or like a level lock or something like that. But kick drum, almost never do I put compression on it, or a snare drum, almost never, because the thing is that I don't like to hear compression on something like that. I don't want to hear. For me, a compressor on a snare drum, it leads these weird attacks and decays. And for me, the way drums sound is just a drum in a microphone. So it annoys me when I hear the compression, I think, on drums most of the time. Can you talk about the dolphin magic on Happy and Sad? Well, that leads me back to the Melodyne question. And she was talking about dolphins or something like that. And so I brought in all these dolphin sounds. And I put them, just dropped them into the track, and I did exactly what I was talking about, where I melodined it into the song. And you create like this kind of ethereal cluster of sound. That could be a synth, could be whatever, nobody knows. But it like is inspiring. It's just found sound that you put into a song, and then you kind of alter it in a way that kind of inspires you and kind of creates some kind of beauty. And so that's what I mean by the melodyning thing. A lot of times if you're stuck mixing, you don't feel inspired by something, then something like that I wasn't not inspired by her song, but we were just inspired to try something fun at that moment. But also, if you're mixing something and you're not feeling inspired at that moment, you can just try something like that, worst case scenario is they tell you to mute it, or they fire you. But I'd rather be fired for adding dolphins to a song than getting fired for any other reason. Not sure how much more time I have, but saturation for drums, yeah. Okay. What are you looking for when you assemble a master chain other than volume? When I'm assembling a master chain, I would say just for me, what I'm looking for is just a kind of cloud of subtle saturation. So if that means putting like 6 very subtle tape saturation plugins on a mix bus, or like any kind of subtle degree of saturation, for me, it seems like, I think of it as a, when you have like just a digital master bus and there's nothing on it, I feel like what you're working into is just air. You're just working into, the ceiling is, if you hit the ceiling, you're going to distort. And beyond that, there's no character. So when I have a ton of different little varying degrees of saturation on my master bus, I feel like the ceiling is not necessarily pure digital distortion. It's a ceiling of this kind of cloud of tapey, vibey saturation that when I push into it, I can kind of feel the energy of that vibe and not just blasting into a ceiling of digital air. So it gives me something to work against. And that's why I like working in that way. All right. I'll answer this last one. What are my 3? Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, the 3 favorite films for mixing. Right now, they are probably for me. It's usually weirdly Alfred Hitchcock. I like Vertigo, Psycho, and Rear Window. Those are my favorite at the moment. Thank you so much for watching today. I hopefully answered your questions, and I'm sorry if I missed out on any. I'm sure I did. But I really appreciate the time and you guys spending these moments with me. And I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Mix with the Masters, for having me.
Shawn, thank you very much. It was really amazing. And thank you for answering so many questions. And
Of
thank you,
course.
everyone, for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Shawn.
Thanks so much.